I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. A minus 31 free throw discrepancy. And I might be able to understand it if we were just chucking threes, but we're not. We're attacking the rim. And the disrespect right now for our team has been pretty unbelievable. So it's disappointing.
Stephanie White was furious about the Indiana Fever's loss to the Liberty last night. She called out the referees in front of everyone, saying, "What we've all been thinking is that the Fever were robbed a minus 31 free throw discrepancy over recent games. But here's the thing, they were robbed a blatant no call on Caitlin Clark in the final seconds that could have tied the game." White didn't hold back questioning whether the WNBA system even works anymore. In this video, we'll share the highlights, replays, and all the receipts against these WNBA referees. Please share your thoughts about these terrible referees in the comments section below.
Then she holds her, watch this, with her shoulder and on her arm when she follows through and then fouls her for the fourth time on her arm. It's cheating. It's plain as day. The haters will say she got locked up. Yeah, if you're fouling the whole game. But I'm going through this entire game. The corrupt refs gave this game to New York and they still barely won.
Imagine this. The Fever and the reigning champions are swapping baskets like heavyweight fighters. Aaliyah. Boston scored 27 points and pulled down 13 rebounds, making them unstoppable. In her first start of the season, Lexi Hall showed her mettle by scoring 15 points when her team most needed her. This was Indiana's championship-level basketball. However, something seemed strange from the first tip. The referees failed to sound their whistles when the Fever drove to the basket and made hard contact that should have sent players to the free throw line, but they did so for Indiana while the Liberty received call after call. The numbers don't lie. In a game decided by 2 points, New York reached the free throw line 32 times the Fever with only 15 attempts, more than doubling the Liberty's free throw total. This discrepancy is so great that
a three off target, batted a lot, bodies on the floor. Clark 1-on-3 trying to split the defense, goes into traffic and reverses it off the glass. And a fearless Caitlin Clark here.
Watch how she uses her body to shield the defender. That's just beautifully done by Caitlin Clark.
Here's what truly demonstrated the Fever's ability. They completely dominated the defending champions, outscoring the Liberty by 17 points in the third quarter. When given an equal opportunity, the Fever shown that they could compete with the league's top team. Every drive to the basket involved contact, but those referees kept their whistles in their pockets when Clark was fouled, while the Liberty players were being called on much lighter contact. Despite everything they threw at her, including double teams, physical play, constant pressure, Caitlin Clark managed to score 18 points and dish out 10 assists.
No pass shot possessions for New York. Clark, step back three. Oh, she hit it and draws the foul. Welcome back, Caitlin Clark.
Before the officials took over, the Fever really had a 12-point lead in the fourth quarter. However, the Liberty made a strong comeback, not just because to some excellent play but also a string of calls that changed the game's dynamic entirely. Jonquel Jones scored 14 points for New York in that last quarter. The difference was clear to everyone watching as she attacked the rim aggressively and got calls that the Fever players weren't receiving.
Our third quarter was really, really good. Obviously, if we won the quarter by 17 points, that's what put us in a position to have a chance to win. So essentially, we really played one good quarter of basketball and lost to the defending champions by 2. So I guess that's positive. A lot of ways to continue to get better.
The Fever had demonstrated that they could outperform the Liberty, thus it wasn't about basketball abilities anymore. The game was set for heartbreak with Indiana playing championship-level basketball, but the officials were up against biased officiating. Every possession mattered, every call mattered, and the referees were going to decide this game in the most contentious way possible. This is where everything fell apart, and you'll see exactly how the officials stole this game from the Indiana Fever, who were down by 2 points with 2.9 seconds remaining. Caitlin Clark receives the ball for what ought to have been the game-tying play. Here was their opportunity. When all is on the line, Clark catches the ball up top. The replay shows that Natasha Cloud makes clear contact with Clark multiple times before, during, and after the play. The contact is evident, and it's the kind of foul that gets called 100 times during a typical game, but the officials never completely stop talking about it. they simply ignore it.
A three off target. Batted a lot. Bodies on the floor. Clark 1-on-3 trying to split the defense. Goes into traffic and reverses it off the glass. And a fearless Caitlin Clark here.
Watch how she uses her body to shield the defender. That's just beautifully done by Caitlin Clark.
Clark should have been sent to the free throw line for 2 shots, according to the replay, which clearly indicates contact. Instead of getting that opportunity, there were 2 free throws that may have knotted the game and forced overtime. The Fever's season record fell to only 2 victories. 2 defeats when Clark is fouled without a call. Their season ends in the most disastrous manner imaginable.
The refs messed up 3 calls in the last 3 possessions of this game. First, DeWanna Bonner gets absolutely destroyed, no call.
However, that wasn't the only contentious decision made in those last moments. The referees missed a clear foul on Dana Bonner 2 plays prior to that no call on Clark. Bonner had a wide-open layup and was heavily hacked, but she missed the shot due to the contact. The Fever lost another scoring opportunity that would have put them up immediately after that missed call. For a phantom foul on Sabrina Ionescu, Lexi Hall is whistled. Despite being in the ideal legal guarding position, not reaching, not grabbing, playing textbook defense, the referees called it anyway.
And then Sabrina Ionescu makes the contact.
While the Fever are receiving no calls on much more obvious contact on the other end, the contact was at best minimal, but somehow that gets a whistle when Bonner gets hammered. Don't those free throws from Ionescu become the game-winning points that shouldn't have existed? She makes both shots and puts the Liberty ahead points that came from a call that never should have happened.
And this is the worst one. There's 1 foul. There's 2 fouls. Then she holds her, watch this, with her shoulder and on her arm when she follows through and then fouls her for the 4th time on her arm. It's cheating. It's plain as day. The haters will say, she got locked up. Yeah, if you're fouling the whole game. But I'm going through this entire game. The corrupt refs gave this game to New York, and they still barely won.
3 pivotal calls against the Fever in the closing seconds changed the game's outcome. First, there was no call on the Bonner foul that could have given Indiana the lead. Second, there was a phantom call on the hole that gave the Liberty free throws and the lead. And third, there was no call on Clark's drive that could have tied the score. The Fever earned the right to have this game decided by basketball, not by referees who kept their whistles in their pockets when Indiana most needed calls. This is the proof that everyone is discussing about the blatant bias that cost Indiana the game. You can't have this level of inconsistent officiating in the closing seconds of a close game.
Coach, you talked about the way that the game has been officiated for you guys. How did you see the foul that was not called, or a lack of foul, on the Bonner play, and then follow it up by Lexi Hall getting called for the foul?
I thought it was egregious, honestly. I mean, I thought it was obvious. I felt like AB got one, had one going to the rim. They're in rotation. DB's was crazy. And then Lexi's, I felt like equally, we talk about, coming into the path, and it was an offensive player veering into the defensive player's path. It is what it is. We have to be able to play through it. But at the same time, I feel like it's really disrespectful.
You've never seen a coach so enraged, and Stephanie White had every reason to be upset given what had happened to her team. She knew her team had been robbed, and she wasn't keeping quiet about it as she entered the news conference. Before she even opened her words, the unfiltered emotion on her face conveyed the entire narrative.
The disrespect right now for our team has been pretty unbelievable. So it's disappointing, that it doesn't go both ways, or it hasn't gone both ways. But we also can't allow that to consume us, right? Like, we've got to be able to play through that. We've got to be able to control the things that we can control.
I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games, she says, revealing the shocking fact that there has been a 31-point free throw discrepancy over the last few games. White makes it clear that this isn't just about one bad call, but about a pattern of officiating that has been going against the Fever for weeks. White calls the no call on Clark in those final seconds. That's coach lingo, meaning something completely absurd. White doesn't use such language unless there is a major issue with the way the games are being called. It's very outrageous.
I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. A minus 31 free throw discrepancy. And I might be able to understand it if we were just chucking threes, but we're not. We're attacking the rim.
But this is where White really takes aim at the WNBA system. She openly questions the league's grievance procedure, claiming that there is a system in place to ensure that we can submit complaints and voice our concerns. In other words, she's essentially saying that the league doesn't give a damn when teams complain about poor officiating because the system is broken. This isn't just frustration talking, though. This is a coach shielding her players from systematic, unfair treatment. White notably highlights her team's aggressive rim attacking style, saying, "We're attacking the rim," noting that the Fever should be receiving more calls rather than fewer because they play a style of basketball that frequently results in fouls, yet the officials aren't calling them.
Steph, given your perspective on the first 4 games, is that something you've already tried to be proactive with the league, or you'll reach out to them and let your feelings known?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a system to making sure that we can send stuff in and communicate, our grievances, so to speak. I don't know that I ever feel like the system works. We're not looking for a change. We're just looking for consistency. I felt like the second half of Atlanta, at least at our place, was at least consistent, right? And that's the thing that we're looking for.
White's unfiltered emotion demonstrates the depth of this issue. This is about respect now, not just one game. Her team isn't receiving the deference they are due from the officials, and the Fever are up against the odds every night because the referees regard them differently than other teams. This press conference will be remembered as the moment someone finally said what needed to be said. White put the WNBA on notice that the officiating bias against the Fever has to stop. Her team deserves better treatment. White's bravery in speaking out publicly exposes the pattern of bias the Fever has been facing all season. Most coaches remain silent about officiating because they fear fines. White doesn't care about the consequences. The spectators should watch games decided by basketball, not by referees who remain mute when Indiana is fouled. Caitlin Clark deserves better. This is the unexpected turn of events. The Fever might have needed this heartbreak to turn into a winning squad. "We are 2 possessions from being 4-0 after the loss," Clark herself stated. For just 2 possessions, consider how close this team is to being unbeaten at the moment.